Hi, there is a recent peer-reviewed paper that was published in March this month in 2018 regarding glyphosate having been traced in a number of pregnant women in USA, and apparently their term of pregnancy was shortened, and which correlates to birth defects or improperly developed, insufficiently developed babies to be born. And this is going around, making its round in anti-GMO, anti-glyphosate, anti-herbicide groups to protest the government's approval of this thing. This article was written by a number of people, including Mr. Parvez, whose name is upfront. It was a test done on a number of pregnant women in the US. Now, I decided to make this video to put the matter in better perspective. This is going around right now as if is the first time this has been discovered in urine of pregnant women, and therefore it's causing a lot of problems and it should be banned. Well, to start with, it's not the first time. So I would mention among many these reports that came out with a number of scientists in 2010, which is 8 years ago, from the Pampas, from Argentina, and by Dr. Carrasco and a few others, that investigated birth defects taking place among the indigenous people of Argentina in the Pampas, which has been used or is being used to grow Roundup ready soy, and Roundup was being sprayed by aircraft over these vast plains of the Pampas, and the villages, indigenous villages which were around that in the Pampas got affected, and they started having this birth defect, strange birth defect that didn't happen before. And Dr. Carrasco and all found that only thing that had changed was the introduction of spraying with Roundup. So what they did is they did an embryological test on frogs, on frog embryos, by reducing the dosage to compensate for smaller size of the frogs, and injected them with this herbicide, and found that they have this teratogenic defect or effect, which meant that baby frogs in this case were being born with serious problems in their development, including microcephaly, which is babies being born with small heads and abnormally developed or undeveloped brains, or parts of the brain missing, and of course other defects as well. And then they also duplicated these tests by just injecting same amount of very small amount of pure glyphosate and not the concoction that's known as Roundup. So instead of diluted Roundup, they also tested with diluted glyphosate, and they could reproduce all the defects in the embryos, and thereby concluded that it's not so much the adjuvants and other things, which also might be bad in Roundup, that were causing most harm, but it was glyphosate itself that was really nasty. Now, this is a detailed report that came out in 2010, and well, it was not American women, it was indigenous women of the Pampas. And does that make it any less important? Does it have to be pregnant women from the United States before the world wakes up? And there are also other reports where wildlife is getting, facing extinction because glyphosate or Roundup or concoctions of glyphosate are not only used in human agriculture, but it's sprayed over the forest, sprayed over grassland, it's everywhere. So evidence is there in more ways than one, and this particular article that came out, yeah, alarming as it is, I wanted to put that in perspective, that people have been sleeping over it. I mean, you and I, for a very long time, and it doesn't have to be some American women that find that they end up finding shortened what do you call pregnancy to raise alarm. Another thing, there is this issue about glyphosate being detected in urine. Monsanto has been harping on the story that it doesn't bioaccumulate. If it's in the urine, it's proof that it's being flushed out by the body. Well, that glyphosate bioaccumulates has been proven by other tests by other people, and those, according to me, are far more relevant than finding glyphosate in urine, even if it is in 90% or 100% of the people, because urine is what is going out of the body and what is essentially being flushed out. So there are lots of people who have found accumulation of glyphosate in the body, but starting with Monsanto themselves, their own studies, if you look into the matter, you will find that there are evidence of that. But most important, scientists that have identified that glyphosate does bioaccumulate. It is being found in all sorts of places. It's been found in hooves of animals and egg proteins of chickens, or gelatins coming from the animal bones, or even nails and teeth of human, are, for instance, Anthony Samsel and co-authored by Stephanie Seneff. I mean, this has been known for a long time. So that means it does bioaccumulate, it does cause harm, and people like Anthony Samsel have even described how many different ways it. I mean, mineral chelation is one, that it steals your nutrients. It's damaging your microbiome or gut bacteria is another. It's mimicking glycine, an amino acid which is part of the building block of life for all life, and all proteins, human and other animal proteins are made of this a few amino acids, and this one slips through our defense mechanism and gets misincorporated into proteins because it mimics glycine, is also identified and covered in papers. Anthony Samsel even found glyphosate in vaccines, because vaccine makers use cheap egg protein and other stuff to prepare their vaccine cultures, and not organic or clean sources. So clean ingredients, and as a result he suspected that glyphosate would be in vaccines. He got them tested and he published that too. So yes, this information is important, but there is a whole lot more and a whole lot around this issue that's already present, and I just wanted to put that whole matter in perspective. There is another thing, I don't think there is much use in collecting signatures and sharing this message round and round with millions of people to ban glyphosate. And I don't think asking the government to ban is going to make any difference. The government is not going to do it. No government has done it so far. Roundup and glyphosate did not become the most used herbicide on the planet for nothing. Governments are in the pocket of these corporations. It has to be looked at differently, and that is the safety documents that supposedly prove glyphosate is safe for humans has not been released by any nation, any government that has approved it to the people, and this makes its approval illegal. By safety document, I do not mean third-party opinion. So and so report says it's safe, so and so. No, the Germans found it in safe, and so and so people. All these are third-party opinions. The only thing that qualifies as safety test data is glyphosate administered in the food to a bunch of animals, and their health parameters measured and compared with identical bunch of animals that are living the same lifestyle and eating the same food without glyphosate. And the comparison of health of these animals, preferably throughout the lifespan of these animals, are the data and proof whether glyphosate is harmful or not. For example, if the clean animals that are fed foods without glyphosate get an average of say 2 persons out of 100, 2 creatures out of 100 developing cancer late in life, and the ones that are eating glyphosate laced food get 8 person out of 100 getting cancer. That proves that glyphosate is carcinogenous, and so it goes, all other diseases also. This data is missing from the public domain, and it should be in public domain, and that's the reason people should get after the government which is engaged in illegal activity. Now, when you conduct this test, you have to be careful about another thing. The so-called animals that are fed clean food without glyphosate, one needs to test and check that they are actually clean food. Why I say that is because corporate made food for lab test animals are around in USA, and those corporate made lab foods for animals have also been tested to contain glyphosate. So therefore, when you do this test, you are not even doing an honest test, because you are taking the control animals to be pure clean while they are not clean. There is a whole lot of incorrect data coming around, and all this needs to be scrutinized and details made public. I'm sitting in India, and this is a major thing. It is the most used herbicide everywhere. How much of glyphosate has gotten into the food, nobody knows here, and how much glyphosate is sold or used, nobody knows. The safety document should be demanded. Some labs should be allowed to conduct independent tests. It's not very difficult to test embryos, frog embryos or other small lizards, and let's say mammals like rats and so on. From embryo onwards, what happens when glyphosate is administered in the food compared to animals that are actually having clean food without glyphosate. It's not difficult to do this test, and it must be done, and people should insist that they be allowed to do. At the moment, they are probably not allowed to do this test without permission of Monsanto, and these are the things that need to be sorted out. And just because some, with all due respect, a few pregnant women's urine were detected to contain glyphosate is not the full story. It's a very small part of a very big problem. Okay, I'm done with my rant.